All right. Hey guys, this is Justin, and I'm going to do something I've never done before. I'm going to do a Star Wars reaction video, and I'm only going to talk about one thing. I'm going to talk about Snoke and his role in The Last Jedi, and how there's three different theories I can think of that make his role way deeper and way more expansive of the universe itself than anything we've ever seen. In fact, there's so much hate going on for Episode 8 right now, which makes me sad because I think it's one of the best Star Wars out there, and I think it actually adds a lot to the mythos. And if we can get past our preconceived notions of what we hoped 8 was going to be, I mean, it did such a masterful job of subverting almost all of our expectations. It's not perfect, and I think that certain parts like the Canto Bright scene most certainly could have been different, and accomplished the same thing. By all means, it's not an absolutely perfect movie, but I think it did so much incredibly right that I think it's kind of a shame to not talk about it. So obviously, spoilers aside, and if this video does really well, if you guys give me some likes or whatever, just show me some love on this video. I had a couple other theories I want to throw out there about Force Ghosts and where we're going to see Luke and everything else. I'd be very happy to talk about that stuff in the future here. But for right now, I want to talk about Snoke. Obviously, again, spoilers coming. So Episode 7 sets Snoke up as this, you guys can't see my full screen, but there's all these different Snoke theories here on YouTube that people kept putting out there, and everyone was just so sure that Snoke was going to be important. And at the end of the day, I don't think Snoke ever really mattered. Snoke mattered as much as the Emperor mattered, and the Emperor really didn't matter to Star Wars that much. We see him very briefly in Empire, and then of course, he's much more important at the end of Jedi. And I'm going to talk about the end of Jedi here in a minute, because I think that what Snoke does is what the Emperor was doing in a very unique way, in a way that nobody's really talked about yet. So we'll get to that. But at the end of the day, the Emperor was just a big bad, right? He was just the guy who was really in charge of everything. He was a Sith or a dark side user, and he controlled Vader and everything else, right? So with Snoke, we have three options. Option number one is he's not important, and that's okay, right? So Rian Johnson is trying to subvert a lot of our expectations. Who are Rey's parents? Who's Luke? What's he going to be? Who's this Snoke guy, right? And it's very possible that Snoke was just a cog in the machine that brings us to where we are. And if that's the case, honestly, I'm fine with that. Sometimes the best things in Star Wars are the things that leave you to speculate. Why is Boba Fett so popular, right? Because until the prequels came out, there was so much mystery surrounding him. He had some pretty cool armor, and he seemed like a pretty cool bounty hunter until he got punked by Han without even trying. Blind Han knocks him into the Sarlacc, right? But by and large, there's nothing that says Snoke has to be all powerful. He certainly seems to be powerful. He certainly seems to have some power, and they could still allude to that power in Episode 9 and other further developments if they want to, but absolutely they don't have to. It's fine to have a disposable villain if he moves the plot along, and he did move the plot along. He made Kylo Ren make a choice, and that choice put Kylo Ren into power. However, there's a couple other options I want to talk about. So option number 2 is that Snoke is important, and in fact, he's not even dead. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, of course, at the end of at the end of The Last Jedi, we see Luke doing a force projection where he is tangible, right? In the originals, we saw Force Ghosts, we saw Yoda, and we saw Ben Kenobi, and they both were not very tangible. They were very translucent. They were glowing. They had this blue aura around them. Ben did sit, when he was talking to Luke on Dagobah. Ben comes and he actually sits down. So there's some sort of tangibility there. But when Luke is, at the very end at that showdown with Kylo Ren, he has none of that. He's not translucent. He is not see-through. He doesn't have a blue aura, and he seems very, very tangible, even though he's not actually there. Now, if Luke, in all of his power, could be doing that, and if Snoke is as powerful as Luke or even more powerful, is it not possible that Snoke could maintain this similar style of illusion, even to the point of getting cut in half? Luke could do it with Han's dice. Remember, he picks up the dice and he gives them to his sister. And when Luke disappears, the dice disappear, right? So he could maintain multiple things in multiple places. That's powerful. We've never seen power like that from the Force. And if Luke could do that, it would stand to reason that Snoke could do that too. So it's possible that Snoke is not dead. It's possible that Snoke played everything out the way he wanted it to play out with Kylo Ren, and let Kylo Ren do exactly what he was going to do. And that would actually kind of make sense, right? And this goes into my third theory, and that is that for some reason, Snoke wanted Kylo Ren to take him down. Now, this is something I've heard a lot of people complain about, and I think it's because they're being very superficial in their understandings of that scene in the throne room, right? And Snoke pulls Rey up and puts her in front of Kylo Ren, and he says some monologue about strike down your true enemy or whatever. And, he turns the saber and strikes down his true enemy. And everyone's like, oh, this is so dumb. He's totally, orchestrating what's going to happen. And if for someone who's so powerful, how can he not see what Kylo Ren is doing? I think he wanted to be struck down. Why? Let's go back to Jedi, Return of the Jedi. Emperor, Luke, Vader in the throne room. And the Emperor keeps telling Luke, strike me down with your Jedi weapon, right? And eventually Luke does. Or at least he tries. He picks up his sword and he swings it, and he is blocked by Vader. Now, this is something that the prequels kind of, I think, botched, because in the prequels there can only ever be two, right? A master and apprentice. But which one did we get, right? I think that whole thing is dumb. I'm not a big fan of the prequels. But what if Palpatine was actually okay with being struck down? So the question becomes, why? What could a Sith gain by being struck down, right? Well, let's think about Episode 4, Ben Kenobi. And Ben faces off against Vader, and he says those iconic words, if you strike me down, I will become more powerful than you can ever imagine, right? And what does Vader do? He strikes him down. And you'll notice that his lightsaber goes through Obi-Wan's clothes. Maybe they're going to retcon this and Obi-Wan was actually doing a projection the whole time. I don't think so. But I always thought it was interesting that Vader's lightsaber didn't even disturb the fabric of Obi-Wan's cloth, right? But Obi-Wan says, if you strike me down, I'll become more powerful than you can ever imagine. Well, we don't ever see that power in Empire, but we do see that power in The Last Jedi. Because, of course, we see Yoda come back, and he can literally, he's like a god at this point. He can call down lightning bolts from the sky. He's a little whimsical at times. He's much more like the old Yoda that we knew from the original trilogies and not this sad, serious Yoda from the prequels. But he actually had real power. So what if the Emperor could do the same thing? I'm not super knowledgeable about the expanded universe. I've read a few of the books, I'm a closet nerd when it comes to the expanded universe of Star Wars. And I know that there are dark side force ghosts. I know that they can do certain things, but obviously all of that is now no longer canon. So it doesn't really matter, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to be cribbing notes from that. So one thing that never made sense to me about the original trilogy, and that Episode 8 really helps to possibly shed some light on, is this: Luke was never in it for the power. Right. And in fact, Luke's real victory was a passive victory. He chops off his dad's hand, sees himself becoming his father, and then chucks his lightsaber to the side. Right. And in fact, at the end of Episode 8, his win is another pacifistic win. He wins without having to actually pick up his lightsaber even once, and starts off this whole mythos of Luke Skywalker, which of course we see in the concluding scene, the concluding shot of the movie. That's powerful. That's amazing that they can do that. I think it was very intentional. I think that was very wise. It was way smarter than Luke going and making his last stand and dying. Right. The mythos of Luke Skywalker disappearing and they couldn't touch him. Right. That's how you start a mythos. And of course, I think we'll see Luke come back too. And that's part of the other theories I'm going to come back to. But so what if the Emperor wanted Luke to strike him down? What if the Emperor knew that by being struck down by Luke, he would become more powerful if Luke would strike him down in anger? Right. And then we see Kylo Ren. And what does he do? Literally, Snoke, I think, is almost mind tricking Kylo Ren. I think he's implanting the idea in his mind. He's, he does that whole monologue about your true enemies in front of you. He turns the lightsaber and strikes down his enemy, or whatever he says. And again, I've actually only seen it once, but I've done a lot of meditating upon this moment. And I think that is brilliant. I think Snoke wanted to be struck down because by being struck down, he actually can become a god of a sort, much like Yoda, just on the dark side, right? Or the Sith side, whatever you want to say. And I think that is crazy when you think about it. That's really a cool thought. That adds something to the mythos of Star Wars that we have not seen in any of the prequels. The best the prequels could do to adding something real and tangible to the mythos of Star Wars, I think, was when Emperor Palpatine's talking to Anakin about Darth Plagueis. Like, that's one of the coolest scenes in the whole prequel trilogy. And that's, honestly one of my favorite scenes in the whole prequel trilogy. And I think it's really only one of the good ones, because so much of it, there's so much stilted dialogue. There's so much, bad writing. I think that one scene has some of the best acting, some of the best dialogue, and some of the best narrative, right? But this really goes back and it almost not retcons, but it explains things. It expands on things in a way that makes them make more sense. So now we have two different possibilities. Obviously, Snoke could be super powerful and just projecting himself and maintaining the illusion. We see his dead body on the ground. He could still be maintaining that. There's no necessary reason he couldn't do that. Now, I don't think that that's true. That's not the one I actually lean towards. We do see the lightsaber seems to like burn through him. I think you can see like the orange line of where the lightsaber cut him and everything else. But I think he wanted to be struck down. I think he allowed himself to be struck down. I think he even set up that whole situation. Because what did he get? What did the Emperor want? He wanted Luke to turn. And obviously, if he gets struck down, he's going to rule the galaxy with Vader, Vader and son, right? And that's fine. So the Emperor's got to get something out of that, right? Either that or he's going to wind up killing Vader and make Luke his assistant. But that's going to be, or his Padawan, his lackey, his crony, whatever. That's kind of a far stretch. I think, the Emperor was trusting that Vader was going to stop him, and Vader had previously offered to overthrow the Emperor with Luke, and together we can overthrow the Emperor and we can rule this galaxy as father and son, right? So I think that the Emperor was okay with being struck down, knowing that his legacy would live on and that he would move on to the next plane and get power because he would be struck down in anger, which is part of what powers a Sith or something along those lines. And we just you don't see anything like that anywhere else until we get to episode 8. And I really think that's what's going on with Snoke. So anyway, I hope that this makes sense and wasn't too rambly. But again, so we have three options with Snoke. One, he's just not important, and I can be okay with that. It's okay to have things that go nowhere. The whole Canto Bight scene that ultimately goes nowhere, it's fine for our heroes to fail. Just like it's fine for Han to wind up parking inside of a giant worm inside of an asteroid, right? It's okay that occasionally the heroes of the story fail. And again, that's a big method or big message of episode 8 as well, is failure is an option sometimes. And actually, I have a whole theory about Poe and how he was right the whole time, actually. And that's the whole point, is that Poe was right, but it wasn't executed well. But so either he's not important and that's fine, or he is important. He's force projecting himself in a way that's stronger than what Luke. And I think that there's grounds to believe that, or he wanted to be struck down because by being struck down, he would become more powerful in exactly the same way Ben Kenobi said it, in exactly the same way we see Yoda being more powerful in this episode. So anyway, if this made sense, if you thought this was helpful in any way, if this, makes you kind of change your opinion on episode 8 a little bit, let me know. If you think I'm totally wrong, that's fine too. Let me know in the comments. I'm honestly really curious what you think about my theory. And this is just one of a few, but episode 8 was the first time I've left a Star Wars movie since they were in the theaters. The originals were in the theaters. And honestly, it was the re-releases. I think I was like 5 when Jedi came out originally. But I saw the re-releases when they put them in the theaters, and they were really exciting. And I grew up watching Star Wars. I love Star Wars. And I remember the prequels. I was so underwhelmed, and I hated feeling that way because it's Star Wars and everyone loves Star Wars. And, they were very disappointing, but this was the first time, even episode 7, I think everyone left episode 7 with a couple of head scratchers, right? I was a little miffed that Han and Leia got space divorced. The whole, hey, it's another Death Star. Hey, we're just rehashing episode 4. And I think that was important, right? I think that what J.J. Abrams did was absolutely incredibly smart, because a lot of Star Wars fans felt burnt by the prequels. And so he needed to do his best to reassure us that Star Wars could still feel like Star Wars. And it definitely felt like Star Wars. I like episode 7 a lot. I would definitely put it above the prequels, behind the original trilogy, and ahead of Rogue One. I didn't really care for Rogue One either, but we can talk about that later. But episode 8 was the first time I left a Star Wars movie really feeling like I'd seen a Star Wars movie. And for me, a Star Wars movie is all about the moments, the Star Wars moments. And there's a couple of amazing moments. I mean, honestly, that whole throne room scene with Rey and Ben, that was some of the best Star Wars ever, right? Admiral Holdo and her sacrifice, even though it's kind of undercut by what Rose says later, which I didn't care for that at all. That was out of place, much like Obi-Wan saying only a Sith deals in absolutes, right? They're not perfect. But that scene was awesome. That was absolutely cool. Seeing Yoda come back, seeing his powers was awesome. That last standoff with Luke was awesome. There were so many moments in this that just really felt like they took what was the essence of Star Wars and crystallized it and made it tangible again. Absolutely Absolutely loved them. So anyway, let me know down in the comments below what you think about my theory. And if I get a lot of response on this, I'll be very happy to shoot some more. This is a very, I'm just shooting this in my office right now, very low budget, no special effects, no nothing. But I'm very happy to put something together a little more formal if I get a good response to this. So anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, and I will be reading them. So, all right, bye-bye.